Welcome, everyone. My name is Terese Bowers, and I am just pleased to be able to come and share with you my experiences on a healing journey, primarily with carnivore, the carnivore way of eating, and why I chose to try that way, how long I did it for, and what the benefits were. And also, I'll talk about lots of tips and things that you might need if you're considering it, and also resources. I've got lots of resources available for you also. I do have a handout that I'm going to put into the chat that you can grab now or later, anytime, whenever. It will give you the resources that I'm talking about. So if you like to take notes, that's great. And if you want to have the handout to take notes with as well, then go ahead and download that as well. So let me just go back a little bit, a few years to on my healing journey. So I contracted Lyme disease in 2009 from a spider bite when I was working in the garden. And I didn't know I didn't know. Actually, I didn't know for a good 10 years later as to what was going on. But that right around that time was when I first started to experience migraines. My very first migraine, I was in orchard country in BC, and that's also where I got the bite. And I was visiting a friend in a cherry orchard, and we were having a fabulous time. And then all of a sudden, I was having trouble seeing, was having trouble holding my head up, holding my body up. And I just had this really I think it was just overwhelming pain that didn't feel like I was any longer in my body. And packed the kids in the car and drove straight home. Probably shouldn't have driven at all, but I didn't know what was going on. And that was the first of many migraines. And I never really went in to get them checked out because I didn't know. By the time I kind of got to the hospital, got myself there, they had dissipated. And so that was just kind of like the start. And then symptoms progressed throughout the next year into more like a chronic fatigue kind of situation. I had tingling all over my body, from my toes all the way up to my head. I had a lot of fatigue, anxiety, and insomnia. So this combination of multiple different symptoms. And it was at that time that my doctor diagnosed me with chronic fatigue syndrome. And that's what I thought it was for years and years and years, and treated my symptoms like they were chronic fatigue syndrome. And a number of years later, I developed multiple chemical sensitivity, which is a sensitivity to toxins in our environment. So, especially laundry detergents, fragrances, cigarette smoke, things that we're not normally bombarded with when we go out in public. And so around 2015, 2016, I had a very small life, was staying home a lot of the time, not able to go out in public. And if I did, I would wear a mask. And that was before it was cool. It's still not cool. It was before it was a thing. And so I was the only one wearing a mask in a grocery store or in the theater. And it was quite intimidating at the time, but I felt that's what I needed to do in order to be out in public. And then I started to develop early stages of fibromyalgia. And by 2019, so all of these symptoms and these conditions starting to pile up on each other, 2019, I had a really big turn, and all my symptoms were full blast, and was really just monitoring my own health and wellness as well as my family. In 2019, went down to a clinic in Seattle, yes, in Seattle, to work with a Lyme specialist, and that was also where I got a Lyme diagnosis. And went on a myriad of supplements and routines, and basically my whole life turned into a health and wellness spa. Let's call it a spa. And by the end of 2019, I didn't have much changes in my wellness, and was really experiencing just continued symptoms and not a lot of relief. So I ended up ditching my supplements. I was on over 30 supplements and multiple different healing regimes during each day. And by December, I was overwhelmed, burnt out, and so there's got to be a better way. And that's when carnivore came. knocking on my door. And I know through health and wellness, we're always looking for that magic bullet, that magic thing that's going to make it all better. And I thought maybe carnivore would. And now I've since carnivore certainly has, which I will share, the multiple benefits. But now I understand there isn't a magic bullet. There isn't that one thing that's going to heal us. It's a multitude of things and practices that we incorporate into our well-being to be able to bring us back to a place of health and wellness. So carnivore is one of the many tools that I have used over the years to bring my body back into balance and homeostasis and healing and just feeling better. So it was in January of 2020 that I started to consume only meat. And it took a bit of a mind processing to really get myself into that place where eating meat was going to be okay and eating only meat was going to be okay. But I was willing to try anything. And so within the first week, I had reduced what I was eating down to just meat. And my body started to transition from fueling itself on sugar or carbs to fueling itself on fat and protein. The transition can be a bit chunky at times, and I'll go through that. But the very first week, I had incredible results. I noticed my inflammation was lowering right away, was building resilience in my body. I seemed to recover more quickly from symptoms or from exposures to toxins. I felt more solid. I felt like I was gaining some footing. I began to sleep better. My pain reduced and my brain fog reduced. And one of the really coolest things, so before carnivore, my osteopath would tell me about my internal organs and how they were starting to fuse together due to inflammation. And so she would go in and start prying them apart, and it was painful. But it was a process that needed to happen in order for the organs to continue functioning effectively. And so after a month or two of consuming carnivore, I went back to her and said, "Hey, I feel really good. How are the insides of me doing?" And she, as she was doing her treatment, she was like, "Wow, nothing's fused together anymore. The organs were moving free flow. There was space between my organs, and that just felt so good. And that was a really huge key piece for me that I was on the right path and that this was working for me because I was able to bring just much more healing into my body. I'm just going to take a sip. So as my body began to feel more energized and I was able to get out of bed every day, I was being able to manage my pain much better, along with plant medicines that I utilize, of course, with cannabis. And my outlook on life started to brighten. I was certainly in a gloom, and life was a struggle, and I felt like I had more light and more hope. And with sleep and anxiety reduced, I was feeling a lot, much better. Um, so some of the things that I did to help through this process. So the transitional phase from moving off of a whole foods diet onto a meat-based diet is that our fuel system is different within the body. So it's like imagining a car, if it was on gasoline and you were switching it over to diesel, there would be some internal things that would need to change in order to be effective and to work. And so these things are key to keep in mind. So things like diarrhea, or change in bowel movements, change in energy, change in skin, all these things can be impacted in those initial stages of switching. And so it's good to be on top of it and to allow your body this time of transition. So a couple of the key things that I noticed for me was diarrhea and cramping, body cramping. So the diarrhea was a good indication to me that I didn't have the correct ratio of fat to protein. So this is going to be, in our whole foods diet, we're looking at balancing our fruits and vegetables, meats and carbs. And on a carnivore way of eating, we're looking at balancing our protein and our fat, and our electrolytes. So those are our three main factors that are always kind of like this, the soundboard that you're always trying to adjust. And generally it always comes down to those three things is your ratio of protein to fat, correct for you and what you need? And are you getting the right amount of electrolytes? Super, super key. Some people in the carnivore community call electrolytes snake juice. And so you can Google that, snake juice, and find recipes, but I think I've included one on your handout as well. So this was one that I started with, and it was 2 teaspoons of Himalayan salt. You didn't get the link to the handout. Okay, so it's not in the chat. Let me check again. Uh, okay. Oh, I put it in I put the link in the chat and then I didn't push send. There it is. Um, so yes, if you're watching the recording, check in the comments below, and I'll make sure the link is posted there for you. So the snake juice starts with 2 teaspoons of Himalayan salt, half a teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of potassium chloride, and half a teaspoon of magnesium sulfate into 1 liter of water. And then you would drink that throughout the day. That's what I started with, but being that everybody is unique and individual, that's not what I ended up with. So my perfect electrolyte mix ended up being 2 teaspoons of salt and 1 teaspoon of potassium to 1 liter of water. I didn't end up adding the magnesium because I take magnesium pills in the evenings to help with leg cramps, and so it really, I didn't want to take too much extra during the day. I wanted to take all my magnesium at night, so that's an individual choice for you. It tastes quite salty, and so we're starting on a lower amount. So you might not start with 1 teaspoon, maybe you'll start with half a teaspoon and work up to what's going to be tolerable for you. Now that I've been consuming electrolytes in this way for a long, long time, 4 years, over 4 years, I still consume electrolytes. Because I find that if I don't and I just take a pure glass of water without electrolytes in, I'm peeing it out. So electrolytes also help us to absorb the um, the water into our cells. And so, yeah, I don't know how people do it now with just a straight glass of water. Anybody can benefit from electrolytes, just helping the cells to open up. Salt opens up the cells and allows the hydration to go in. So if you're noticing that even on whatever way of eating you are, if you're peeing a lot and you walk away from water because you're like, I just don't want to pee it out, try adding electrolytes in. I've also gotten a little bit kind of lazy maybe over the last while, and so instead of making my own electrolytes now, I do buy electrolyte. This is called Element, LMNT, and it's created by Rob Wolf out of I think he's in Spokane, Washington, and it's a really well formulated. There's no food coloring, there's no added ingredients. It's really, really clean. It does have some stevia in it, so it has a bit of sweetness. So now I just cut it in half. Like I don't have it full strength. I don't need as much electrolytes now as I did on the carnivore diet. So I have lightened that. So the recommended for carnivore way of eating, the recommended salt is Redmond salt. Celtic salt is fine. So yeah, so if you are putting salt already into your water, you are getting the sodium. You're not getting a full panel of electrolytes without the potassium and magnesium, but you are at least getting the sodium. The potassium I would buy bulk from my pharmacist. So we have a pharmacy that's a compounding pharmacy, and so you can buy a lot of compounded things or raw ingredients. So that's where I got my potassium from. And then magnesium stearate, or sorry, not stearate, magnesium stearate. That's in a that's in a vitamin. Magnesium sulfate, you can just buy wherever you buy your vitamins and supplements from, and I buy it in a bulk form so that you can take the amount that you need and you're not pulling apart capsules. So those are the 3 options for how I was getting electrolytes in, either the snake juice or an element from these guys, or I'll show you what they look like. They're just individual pouches. And so that's kind of like, I think they say 32 ounces of water, but I mix it with a lot more than 32. It's pretty potent otherwise. So yeah, element, or mixing your own blend of electrolytes and getting that balance of salt, potassium, and magnesium. So for me, what I was watching for was how was I feeling? So my digestion, so my electrolyte balance. If I didn't have diarrhea and I didn't have body cramping or nerve cramping, then that would give me a good indication that I had the right electrolyte balance. I also took blood work regularly so that I could see and asked for my electrolyte in my blood work so that I could see how my magnesium was doing and how all those levels were doing. So that was a really good indicator. So the next thing about what do you eat? If when you're eating carnivore, what do you eat? What's on that diet, that way of eating? So there is a way of eating called the lion diet in carnivore, which was developed by Michaela Peterson. That's Jordan Peterson's daughter, and she developed arthritis very, very young. Maybe she was even under 3, and she's an adult now. She's had 2 children, but she struggled her whole childhood and teen years with severe arthritis. Had surgery on her ankles to repair joints and ligaments, and when she was, I believe, in her late 20s. I don't know how old she is now. Anyway, in her 20s, they came across her and Jordan Peterson came across the carnivore way of eating. And she shifted to that way of eating because she was having so many issues within her body. And she found that she could only do beef. And so she named that way of eating the lion diet. So some people who have severe chronic illnesses will start with the lion diet. And so that is beef only. That's it. You're only eating beef. That's where my husband started. So he also has psoriatic arthritis, and he has severe food allergies and intolerances. And over the past number of years, so he got his diagnosis right around the time that I got my diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome in 2010. So both of us have been on this parallel journey of healing our bodies from chronic illnesses. And he felt that going the lion diet way of eating was going to be best for him, and so he did that for a good year before he started introducing other meats in. I didn't. I started with a full plate of meats and proteins, and I felt that was the best for me. So what I typically would eat is all meats from beef, pork, deer, elk, fish, so your oysters, shrimp, uh, and different forms of those meats. I'd also use different forms of fats, including tallow. I would make my own tallow out of beef and lard out of pork. So we order half a cow at a time, and I would ask for the bones and the fat so that I could make my own bone broths and make my own fat. So I'm talking a little bit in the past tense here because I did the carnivore way of eating for 3.5 years, and I am on Whole Foods, more of a intuitive way of eating now. So kind of to catch you up, 3.5 years took me to June, July of last year, 2023. I was also quite sick in 2023. I contracted the norovirus in January and didn't heal from it properly. My guts did not heal properly, and I ended up developing SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And so was dealing with that from January up until June. And at that point, I was still on the carnivore way of eating. And at that point in June, I actually couldn't eat any food at all and went off all foods. And in July, I was only subsisting on an elemental shake, which has it's a formulation that you would get in the hospital of just your basic amino acids and fats, just enough to exist. So I did that for the month of July to try and get my digestive system back on track and to try and eliminate the SIBO. So when I was coming back onto food in August, my nutritionist was saying, we just had a pause and we were like, okay, you've done a carnivore way of eating for 3.5 years. It's been really, really good. Is now a good time to transition back onto whole foods? And we decided that it was. And so I'm coming up now on 10 months, I guess, of eating intuitively. So I'm not following any specific way of eating right now. I'm purely eating only what my body will say yes to. And it's still not a lot of foods. I'm still heavily healing from SIBO. I can eat, thankfully, but I can't eat a lot of different foods. And so when I'm talking about what we did at this time, I still do a lot of meats and a lot of fats, animal-based fats. Still have a very heavy animal-based diet, but I do have other foods that I've incorporated now that my body seems to be able to tolerate. So I felt some people will stay on forever. My husband is still on carnivore way of eating because he still has food intolerances and is still managing his arthritis. He's had incredible um, improvement in his well-being, but he still has a bit of a ways to go. So he's staying on the carnivore way of eating. It works for him at this point in time. So I've had some questions about that as how long can you be on the carnivore way of eating? Well, and there are people who are on it indefinitely, and that was going to be me until I had this pause and this break and this realization of, hey, let's try and let's see. Would I go back to carnivore? Quite possibly, and possibly even over the next while if this SIBO continues to be a really big issue for me, I always have carnivore in my back pocket that I can go back onto. So that's a consideration for me as well. So, excuse me, and I'm just managing a bit of a cold. So, for what I would eat, so people always ask, well, what do you actually eat? What's on your plate? So, I developed different recipes that I really enjoyed, and I found different routines of eating that really helped because emotionally we can be in that place of I just don't want to eat any more meat, or I'm bored with what I'm eating. And I had to change my thinking around eating. So typically we eat for fun. It's an entertaining thing to do. We do it with our friends and with our families. And we do it because sometimes out of boredom, sometimes out of feeling a need or desire. And so we're wanting either that chocolate or that sweet thing or that reassuring thing. And I had to change that way of eating and go into the perspective that I'm eating to nourish my body and I'm eating to exist and to keep myself on this planet and to build a healthier way within my body. So for breakfast, I love to have pulled beef or pulled pork with lots of tallow on it. I would also have eggs or bacon as an alternative, or leftovers. And so that was kind of like my mainstay, but definitely pulled beef and pulled pork were like that's what I wanted to get up to every morning. That would last me a really like solidly until 1 o'clock. So I would eat around 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 1 o'clock I was ready for lunch. I would not snack. I did have teas and lots of liquids, lots of electrolytes throughout the morning, but I would not snack. I wouldn't need have the desire. So that was really nice because coming before carnivore, I was eating every 2 hours in a whole foods way of eating. I wasn't getting enough I couldn't eat enough to sustain myself. And so I was eating every 2 hours to avoid low blood sugar. But on the carnivore way of eating, I did not experience low blood sugar. My insulin was consistent. I didn't experience insulin resistance, and I was able to coast and exist off of the fat and the protein that I was eating. So for lunch, I would generally have leftovers. So we would make a big meal at dinner. So dinner time would be steak or roasts or fish or roasted chicken. Chicken actually was my least favorite food to eat because it's not high in fat. So I would only eat the fattier parts. Chicken breast was not on my agenda. It just felt like a waste of time. And I have to eat so much of it. So I much preferred like a leg or a drumstick or a meaty thigh with all of the fat on it, all of the skin. Recently, I've had two meals where somebody prepped the chicken for me, and they cut off the skin and handed me the chicken recently, and I was like, "What is this? Where's the skin? I need the skin and the fat. I still really need those to exist. That's what my body really thrives on." So sometimes though, so I've got breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then For snacks, I sometimes would have a snack, usually in the afternoon after nap. So I do nap in the afternoons. I always have for the past whatever we're at now, 14 years since my chronic fatigue syndrome. Napping has been part of my regular routine. So after nap in the afternoon, I often just like something snacky. So I might go for a hard-boiled egg, some salmon roe, or bacon. Bacon is a wonderful snack. Canned fish, not too much because I didn't want to have the BPA's, but I wanted, so just on the occasion I would have canned fish or sugar-free jerky, salami, some cured meats. I tried to stay away from having too many of them or relying on packaged foods because you're getting extra additives in there. I did try having dairy for a short period of time as well, and did well with cottage cheese or with cheese or yogurts. And that was fairly temporary before the dairy didn't agree with me. And that's not everybody. I wasn't on dairy before carnivore or gluten, and that seems to be where my body will stay, is staying away from those items. So I did try to bring in many different types of protein as I could. Ended up really enjoying uh, uh, game meat, not game meat, just meat that my friends and family had hunted. So deer and elk, bison was just really, really satiating and felt really good and helped me to feel more connected to those food sources as well because that came with a story, as well as any of the beef and the pork, sheep. We also did sheep and lamb. We went and toured the farms where we ordered these animals from, and we would get a half or a whole, like we would get a whole lamb or a beef or a pork, and really sourced our meat well. Some people are really all about grass fed, and it must be grass fed, grass finished. My perspective on it is if that feels good for you, then do it. We certainly were grass fed, but grain finished. And the reason why we did grain finished is because it's a higher fat content. We did try grain or grass fed, grass finished. And on the carnivore way of eating, it just wasn't enough fat. I was adding butter onto the steaks, and I just found them quite lean. And so we were okay with them being finished with barley, or with something that was grown on the farm, so that they're not being force fed, but they're being fed something that's higher fat quality. Another aspect of eating gives us more opportunities for a varied mix of vitamins and minerals is eating organ meat. So my husband is excellent at this. He loves eating organ meat, and he actually did it to excess that he caused himself vitamin A toxicity. So that is something to watch out for as well. So a lot of people would think that scurvy, so that's like a lack of vitamin C, would be a really big risk with a carnivore, but it's actually vitamin A toxicity is more risk than vitamin C toxicity. Scurvy, from our how it originally how we came to know about it was people on boats and ships at sea for long periods of time eating canned foods, canned meats, so they weren't getting fresh meats, fresh anything. Scurvy doesn't, I've not heard of it in the carnivore community because there is vitamin C available, or you can take vitamin C if you feel like that, but there is vitamin C available in small amounts. Also, the requirements of our supplements and our vitamins is different on a carnivore way of eating than it is with a whole food diet. And it's because the research that we have on a healthy way of eating is based on a whole foods diet. We don't have, well, it's coming, but research on if you're eating only carnivore, what do you need? And it is different. The needs of the body are different. So I did, again, kept taking a regular blood work so that I could see what might be missing or what was deficient in. One of the metrics on my blood work that was the one I was watching the closest was cholesterol, because it did go up because I was eating more meat, and more meat does cause a higher cholesterol. But is that unhealthy? That's the piece where we need more research. Is that unhealthy? When your cholesterol is coming from meat, it's not coming from processed foods or from other unhealthier aspects of eating. So I didn't worry too much about that at all. I just kept my eye on it. So vitamin A toxicity, I'll get back to that. That basically is don't eat organ meat every day. Balance it out with the other meats that you're eating. So things like liver, heart, kidney, all the organs, tongue, I think brain is even on the list too, all have different amino acids and minerals that help those organs within our own bodies as well. I did not become a full-fledged lover of organ meat. I would take a bite or two at a time, and if that's not your way either, they do now come in dried forms. You can take them as a supplement. Yeah, there's lots of reputable people out there that are sourcing that and bottling it, so you don't have to actually eat it. So the other things to consider is when you're eating, moving to a carnivore way of eating, why are you moving to this way of eating? So one of the questions was, who can benefit from a carnivore way of eating? And while a carnivore community would say everyone, and I'm not going to paint that paintbrush. I'm just going to say that the carnivore way of eating is really, really good for all sorts of chronic conditions. So if there's treatments that you've been trying or you're on prescriptions that aren't working or that are causing other issues within your body, carnivore may be an effective option for you. So things like leaky gut or autoimmune issues or anxiety that you just can't seem to manage or depression or hormone imbalances, even menopause can benefit greatly from a carnivore-based way of eating. And I wondered about that too. So I'm 50 and I through the carnivore, I was like, geez, I wonder if this is going to help set me up for just an easier way of entering into my menopause years. And so far, so good. I have a family history of having quite complex and difficult menopause experiences. So I'm really grateful right now that that's not the case for me. I'm still crossing fingers. Who knows? It can change at every moment, but I'm balancing my cycle still quite well. And so that's kind of cool. So I don't know, being off of carnivore now, if the benefits will ride out for the next 3 years or not. We will see. But definitely, uh, it can be wonderful for all different ages and stages in our well-being. And one of the reasons is because we are protein deficient. In our culture, we are so protein deficient. We, as women, especially in the menopause age, need 60 grams of protein a day minimum. And it's really good to start with 30 first thing in the morning. If you start with 30 grams of protein, whether you're doing carnivore or not, you will set yourself up for a way better day. It doesn't matter what the source of the protein is, as long as it's a good absorbable protein that you're getting. So that's my non-carnivore little tip there. How much would you eat? So typically you're looking at 1.5 to 2 pounds of beef a day, and feel it out and see how much do you need? Do you need more than that? Do you need less than that? Basically, you want to eat to satiate till you're satiated. And focus on your fat. So make sure there's always fat accompanying your protein, whether it's putting some tallow or some ghee or some butter on your steak or yeah, just fat. Those are going to be really key, the fat and the protein. Some people like to, like I said before, incorporate dairy, and you certainly can. Raw milk is a wonderful addition as well. Very hard to get here in Canada, much easier to get in the States. I do have a website. I don't think I put it on the handout. But for those who have just joined us, here's the handout that you can get a copy of that I've been sharing, that highlights some of the things that I've been talking about, including our electrolytes. So if you missed about the electrolytes, check back into the recipes for electrolytes. So raw milk is an option. I didn't do it because it's dairy and I don't do dairy very well, but raw milk is rich in food enzymes, and it can also has great protein in it too. And as I said before, my preferred salt was Redmond's real salt, but Himalayan's good. Whatever you have, Redmond's is just like the gold star. There's lots of resources available too, that I've written down for you, but I want to kind of review a little bit so you kind of have an idea of what good ones to have. So this is the Carnivore Diet by Dr. Sean Baker. Dr. Sean Baker is an MD, and he's yeah has a really really good approach. That's listed on your handout as well, and it's a really good easy read. I like to flip through that one. The Carnivore Code, and because it's so good, I have two of them because they came out with a new a new edition. So the latest edition, I couldn't tell which is the latest edition. I think maybe this one, but I'm not really sure. So this is Dr. Paul Saladino. He's an MD as well. I think he resides in Costa Rica right now. He originally started as a hardcore carnivore and has since moved to carnivore slash fruit. So he brings in honey and fruit and other aspects in as well and talks about that. I don't know if it's in his carnivore code, but definitely on his website and on his Instagram, and you can get a different balance, different perspective from what he's doing. Carnivore Cure by Judy Cho, and she's a nutritionist. This would be your probably your best book as far as your the best overview and the nitty-gritties. So Judy Cho, I would say, is probably the best to follow right now. All of these other people we've been following over the years, and she seems to have been just honed on in on some really good research and really good uh, like it's filled with facts. So if you're like, give me the goods, give me the deep goods, like you're gonna want her book. And she also brings in other foods as well, but does focus on carnivore. Now this one, is the gaps. So gut and physiology syndrome. So if you heard of the GAPS way of eating, it has a lot of ferments and bone broths. So it's not carnivore. So it would be the next stage coming back off of carnivore. Often people will do a GAPS diet, or if you're trying to heal and you're like, I don't want to go all carnivore, then GAPS is another option as well. So lots of really good information, lots of good recipes in here, and good support. I turned to the Lyme disease one. Interesting. So she reviews a lot of those types of conditions. I will post the link again to the chat for someone just joined. So the link is back in the chat for the handout. So those books are all listed there as well. As some Instagram. So I've given you Judy's Instagram and then another coach, Coach Kate, and then a gut healing, heal your gut guy, as well as some websites for Sean Baker, for Judy Cho, and a group called Beyond Nutrition, which they get together and they have sessions on all things health and wellness with a focus on carnivore as well. So I have talked and talked, and I know there's questions, so I want to just open it up for questions. You can either post in the chat. I do have some chat questions that were submitted that I'll address as well. But let's just see where we go. So that you know everything is recorded here. If you don't want your, yeah, I'll take myself off of Spotlight, and if you're asking a question and you don't want your video to show, just turn your video off, because those that didn't make it here live will get the recording. So questions.
I have so many.
Okay, let's dig in.
Okay, so first of all, with the lion diet, is there a reason why beef? Like, is it healthier, more fatty? Is it just the better option?
That's
Is
a
there
really
any?
good question. I really
Okay,
don't know
okay.
because
No,
I
that's
didn't
fine.
do that way. Excuse me, my husband did that way, so I didn't. So I didn't research it,
Okay, no
but
worries.
I could ask him. Why don't I get a question list for him?
And this is another one that you might not know the answer to, but might, because I was just looking into electrolytes and, the four main minerals are potassium, magnesium, sodium, and calcium, but you did not mention calcium. Did you not use that?
No, I did use that and I
Okay.
forgot. That's a good, I'm gonna put that in my notes right now so that for next time I remember. And the reason I forgot it is because um I don't put it in my electrolytes. I actually okay, this is really silly. This is like my DIY coming out all my woo. I save my eggshells and I sterilize them, grind them, and put them into capsules. And so I found that the perfect dose for me was 4 capsules of the eggshells per day with vitamin K2. K2, you need the
Mm,
K2.
okay.
If you don't take it with a K2, it doesn't get absorbed in. And also your vitamin D3 also needs K2, just as a side. So yeah, so that's why I missed it in the electrolyte because I totally forgot that it's in my
Mhm.
supplements.
Okay.
But my husband didn't. He didn't use the calcium. He didn't feel he needed it. So I don't know if that's a male female thing or just a personal preference thing. Um, but yeah, feel it out, definitely.
Okay. Okay. Because, yeah, the reason I'm here and asking because my husband just recently, just kind of out of the blue, went, I'm gonna do this right now. He was eating, like, he was on this, like a reduction diet, calorie reduction diet, 1500, and he was just basically eating, chicken and rice and vegetables and meat, rice, and meat, potatoes, and veg at dinner, chicken, rice, vegetables. Now he's just eating meat, avocado, cheese, um, and eggs, and he's eating like 6 eggs a day, and I'm like, is that a lot? Because I know we've been like what we've been told. I know that's a bunch of BS, and all our eggs are happy from happy chickens and all of that. So, but like, can it be too much? And I worry about his cholesterol levels, and I'm worrying about him getting all the proper nutrition that he needs
Mhm. Yeah,
by
so
not eating fruit and stuff like that. I'm like, can you live without eating a fruit?
and absolutely, and I felt great. I really did. Without eating fruits and vegetables, I really felt great, and I didn't even want to eat them, whether it was the sugar or whether it was whatever was in it. Yes, you can get everything that you need from meat. There's another graphic that I'll look for that shows the composition of proteins and what vitamins and minerals you can get for them. So I'll find that for you,
Oh, okay.
Jay, and get that for you. So eggs. So yes, so in my family, so it was me, my husband, my son, and my nephew who were all eating carnivore. My nephew at the time was 22, 23, working in construction, and he was eating definitely 6 eggs in the morning with bacon or sausages. And so we were like, we were about ready to go get chickens, buy
Yeah.
chickens because we were going through them a lot. So, yes, that's pretty typical, as
Okay.
for a man that's working and moving around, needing that much. Yeah, and so I didn't choose to go the egg route because it just felt like a lot. So that's why I stuck with more meats, and got the bulk of my protein from a meat, as opposed to from an egg. So an egg for me, we would be more an add-on, not the main dish.
Mhm.
Cholesterol, yeah, that's a whole nother, um, again, I don't have the research on this because I didn't dive into it. I basically just read the books and they were talking about how don't worry about the cholesterol.
Hmm.
Don't worry about it. And now that I'm not carnivore, my cholesterol is completely normal. And it was only above a little bit. It wasn't in a danger zone. It was just slightly elevated, but I knew the reason why. And so that's why I wasn't concerned about it. The cholesterol levels are set based on whole food diets, not based on carnivore diets. And so this is the piece that it's really hard to like, yeah.
Awesome. I'm looking at the the chat too, and I'm also interested to know what kind of spices, like, is there anything
So
you're
when,
not
yeah,
to?
spices, herbs, and flavorings, things like that. So originally, both of us started with nothing, like completely no plants, no, salt, and I couldn't even do pepper. My husband did pepper, but I couldn't even do pepper. It would cause my an upset stomach. So I was only utilizing salt. That was it. After that first year, we did start incorporating more herbs, mostly herbs from my garden. I'm trying to keep it clean, trying to keep it local and fresh.
Mhm.
So I did use those herbs as flavoring. Other spices like um, if you, so again, there's like with anything, there's like the hardcore, right? And hardcore carnivore is no spices, no herbs. But feel it out. If you have some and it's like, oh, it feels all right. Like I would start definitely with starting as pure as you can to see, so that basically it's an elimination diet. So you've eliminated everything but meat. And
Mhm.
feel that out for a bit and see how your body feels, and then start incorporating how does it feel with some spices and herbs on my food. Did that make it, did that feel okay in my body? And if it did, then keep it in. If it's like, no, my body's not ready, then just back off that way. And if you need it, if you're like, there's no way in hell I'm going to do this if I don't have something to put on my food, then take it lightly. Try not to use condiments like ketchup and barbecue sauce and things like that. They're going to have a lot of fillers in it. So trying to be as pure as you can. If you need something in on your food, trying to keep it clean as you can, if that makes sense. Um, So Renee, vegetables, a culinary term, absolutely. Go down what you were not supposed to. So vegetables are industrialized. Like we didn't have vegetables back in the day when we were roaming the earth, following the animals. We would have root vegetables, right? But broccolis, brassicas, and things like that are not native to us. We've kind of created them as a food source. So when I first started going back onto off of carnivore, I did try to stick to more of root vegetables or more ancient things that were like the orcas and sweet potatoes, and not potatoes, but like a sweet potato or something that has a longer lineage. Grain has not been with us for very long at all. It's fairly relatively newly introduced into our bodies. So anything that's farm grown to the capacity that it is now, we didn't have. So Renee, thank you for bringing that up. There are also, so Paul Saladino, as soon as you go to his website, so that's this one, the carnivore code. As soon as you go to his website, it talks about how vegetables don't want to be eaten. They create lectins and enzymes that are supposed to irritate us, and some of us do really well with vegetables, and we're not disrupted by these lectins and these chemical substances that are in plants. And other people like me are be like, whoa, my body cannot handle that. And so I'm still very cautious about vegetables, especially things like kale. Kale is full of really, really hard to digest things, and we're eating this food raw. So even cooking it or steaming it would be better. But pay attention to your body, and you might know what your body can do and how you have evolved essentially to be able to eat these modern foods. But they are modern foods. Vegetables are modern foods. Fruits, yeah, we were berry pickers and we were foragers. So fruits are certainly more along yeah, they are certainly higher than in sugar. So more like a berry, a wild berry. So things that grow in nature, not things that are domesticized, like strawberries and raspberries are very high in sugar content. But if you go up like to the Saskatoons or the huskberries or the thimbleberries, things like that we don't eat because they're bitter. They're not the sweetness that we grow to really like. So that's what Renee's saying. Is the fruits are um, yeah, they've been changed to make us like them. We love to have sweet things and we love flavorful things. So take everything I say with a grain of salt, Redmond salt, and feel it out for yourself. And it is a rabbit hole once you dive down into it. Uh, Uh, yes, greens are good. Yes, if they feel good in your body. Yes, yes. Yeah, you don't have to eliminate all vegetables, but those of us who our bodies are just no longer responding well to them, that we're the ones that are being like, okay, why can't I eat a bowl of salad? Why doesn't that work for my body? And if it does work for your body, then that's great. But it's about listening to our own bodies and listening to what our makes our bodies tick and not going based off of the food guide, because the food guide is not unique for each individual person. So basically that's where I want you to pay attention to, is how it makes you feel and how food sits within your body. Okay, that was our rampage. Let me take a breath. Is there any some more questions that I can dive into? So the whole key, I believe, is just finding the most natural source of whatever it is that you're eating. Anything that comes in a package is not really healthy food. We can buy box things for the times that we need them, but when we're relying on them 100% of the time, we're not going to get the nutrient value that we're really wanting. So trying to get as close to nature as possible by in our meats and in our proteins, in our vegetables, and just in our way of eating, incorporating them as much as we can. Oh, let me go back to my question list because there was a couple more questions. Oh, there was a pros and cons of keto versus carnivore. That's a really, really good question, and I can't really dive into it because I never did keto. I ate paleo, raw, vegan, autoimmune protocol, carnivore, and now and vegetarian and vegan, and now I eat intuitively, which you can't label because it's the Terese diet, so you can't even follow it. So I can't really, the only thing I can talk to about keto versus carnivore is that keto brings in a lot more dairy, brings in a lot more beans, I think, and seeds and legumes, I believe. So it's a wider food range. So it is no carb. So that means you're not doing grains and you're not doing fruits and sugars. So it doesn't have the carbs, but it still has the protein. But the protein also comes from other sources like dairy. So some people do well on keto. Some people find they even like it. Some people find keto as a step to carnivore, and if that feels comfortable for you, then that's great too. But also, yeah, it's just a little bit more food options than what carnivore offers. Another question was, how does a carnivore diet benefit the body? Well, it really moves us into this space of changing the fuel source. So we're changing from sugar into fat. Sugar is a very short-lived fuel system within the body. And so that's why we're eating, often we're snacking or we're eating often throughout the days because our body uses the sugar. Sometimes it spikes with the sugar and then it heavily drops. Fat is more satiating, so we have a fat and protein-based diet. So when you eat that, you get more sustained energy for longer. So that's how it benefits the body. And I also, in my experience, it was less impactful on the digestive system. I didn't really talk about poops, but let's talk about that a little briefly here. Do you poop on carnivore? Absolutely. Do you need fiber to poop? No, you don't. How do you poop on carnivore? Well, kind of like an animal. I just squat and it happens. It was bizarre. It was like, was that, I didn't have to like struggle, or it doesn't smell. It came out perfectly formed, just like an animal, right? Like they're eating the diet that works for their bodies. And so I found that my digestive system worked way more efficiently. I would have one great poop a day, and that was what I needed to sustain me. And I really, really liked I liked how it felt within the body. So that was the huge benefit for me. Also, my mood stabilized, so I was having some mood shifting with anxiety and depression, and my mood stabilized. My skin cleared, and I believe that I lost a few years in aging. So it's anti-aging as well. And the other question was, does it include all meats or basically steak? Yes. So we talked a little bit about that, how if you're only eating steak or beef, then it would be the lion diet. If you're eating all meats, then it's just the carnivore diet, or way of eating. So, intuitive, yes, Renee, intuitive eating, intuitive living, really. Let's just do everything intuitively, from now on. I'm tired of following someone else's prescribed thing for me. I want to follow mine. Paying attention to the body is so key. This is what Renee's sharing with us. Yes, absolutely. Once you start eliminating, it's easier to pay attention. Yes, because the slate gets wiped clean. So if you have a lot of foods and a lot of things in your environment and you don't necessarily know what's causing issues, starting with a fresh palate is a really good idea. Even if you just did carnivore for a month, I would say a month is a month is even not very long. 3 months is ideal to be able to really get a handle on what's going on in the body. And then if you want to start introducing foods back in a really slow and methodical, mindful way, to see, oh, when I bring back, let's say, yogurt, how does it work within my body? How does it feel? And you'll really know. It'll be because you've got that clean slate for you. All right, well, we are at the top of the hour. If there's any last minute questions I can squeeze in, I'm happy to. Otherwise, we will save this recording and I will send it out to you for your reference. And yeah, I'll post the handout here again if you didn't get it. So the link goes to the handout. You put your email address in, and then you get the handout. It does put you on my newsletter list, and if you don't want to be on my newsletter list, just unsubscribe. But if you want to know what else I do in life, carnivore is a small little pocket in my life. I also do a lot with cannabis education and medical cannabis, spirituality and cannabis. Um, uh, Music festivals, organic gardening, growing things in my garden, organic way of living, and just being a professional putter, where I get to do whatever my body wants to do at any time, and just have fun with life. So thank you all for coming and for sharing your questions and for being in tune to your own well-being and your bodies, and making a difference for a better way of being. Awesome. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Terese.
You're welcome.